The 17th chapter, in which Lord Montfallcon begins to fear a return of terror, and the Queen begins to question the value of the Virtuous myth. "It has been 13 years, said Lord Montfallcon distantly, since I have seen so much blood." He looked down at Lady Mary Perrot's head, half severed at the neck, at Sir Tancred's sword, which had created the wound, and he was sad, not for the girl who had died so terribly, nor for Sir Tancred and his sin, but for the security of his dream. Vice had been discovered to be disguised as chivalry. He was resentful of both the killer and the killed, who so ominously disturbed a harmony he had maintained with such fortitude since Gloriana's accession. Lord Ingleborough, gasping in his formal wear, with casque and breastplate squeezing throat and chest, and threatening to bring another heart attack upon him, still uncertain as to what had taken place, said, "Why should Tancred destroy her? It is frequently jealousy, of course, which makes a man go mad." Montfallcon was impatient of his old friend's platitudes. "I must report to the Queen. Is Sir Tancred restrained?" "Lord Roon took him." "He must be questioned." "He is mad." Ingleborough sat himself weightily upon one of the few chairs which were still standing upright, for Lady Mary's room was all wreckage. Oh, the poor child! And gay, a favourite of the Queen's. "The Queen?" "She is in her apartments," said Lord Montfallcon with a sigh. "The Countess comforts her, most likely. The Perrots are one of the most powerful families in the land. They will need more than a conventional explanation for what has happened here." "We'll try him, eh? In the old secret court?" Ingleborough mopped his head. He was sweating, perhaps with fever. "If the Queen allows it. But I see no good can be served by undue punishment. He can be confined to apartments in Bran's Tower, where Prince Lematus is, and those two nobles brought to us by the Thane of Hermiston." "But Tancred's no outland lunatic." "Bran's Tower, 'tis best," said Montfallcon firmly. "If he's guilty." Ingleborough stooped, grunting and feeble, and attempted to pick up the sword, but he could not lift it. It fell back upon the blood-soaked damask of Mary's dress. "Who else?" Montfallcon said. "In Herne's time there might have been 100 to suspect. Now there are none." "I am fearful, Lisuarte." With a final disapproving glance at the young girl's corpse, Lord Montfallcon began to move through the apartment, a surviving ship sailing through carnage after a sea fight. Ingleborough hauled himself out of it like a weary, beaten beast. "You are unwell." Lord Montfallcon gave his friend an arm. They stood in the corridor where green-clad Patch, a little fawn, awaited them. "Patch, take your master home. Sleep, Lisuarte, and be firm with him, Patch." He smiled at the handsome boy. "Aye, sir." "You'll accompany me?" inquired Lisuarte Ingleborough, gripping Patch's slender shoulders and looking back at his friend. "Eh?" "I must to the Queen to make my report." "The quintain is cancelled, then?" Montfallcon was dry. "Aye, since the chief participant, the champion, is indisposed." Lord Ingleborough shrugged. "The quintain is all I care for in these entertainments, and even those are tame compared to the tilts of my youth. Or by the Queen's command we mourn all of us for Lady Mary." Ingleborough retreated. Lord Montfallcon wondered if he too had become a dotard. He looked sadly upon his hobbling friend. "My lord," It was Wheldrake, half stripped of his feathers, his bird mask under his arm. Is Lady Mary truly murdered? Aye. By whom? The poet's voice was so high as to be almost inaudible. By Tancred? It would seem so. His sword, her throat. Hermes. Lord Montfallcon put a steady hand on the tiny poet's twitching shoulder. A funereal ode, perhaps, Wheldrake. The court's in mourning from this hour by order of the Queen. She was but a child, 16 summers. Wheldrake trembled. A merry child, and she loved Sir Tancred so, with such innocence. They were model lovers, we thought, and happy friends. She gave him all. But not enough for the romantic soul, perhaps. Such as Sir Tancred demand a response as intense as their own. Recall how he burns to serve the Queen. His belief in chivalry is absolute. It is why such as he are so often rejected, so often thwarted, or wounded in love, too passionate, too furious in their loyalty. No, said Wheldrake, she was killed by another, I'd swear. Well, who else? They walked slowly side by side through the silent golden halls. A servant? Who tried to seduce her and failed, taking vengeance? Unlikely, Master Poet. Another lover? She had none. Lord Montfallcon licked his lips. Her father must be told. I'll send a messenger to Hever. I am full of doubt, Master Wheldrake. I suspect a portent, since this palace ran with innocent blood. It stank of blood once, you know. Blood bloomed on tapestries, stained walls, crusted guilty blades. Girls like Lady Mary died almost daily, stabbed, poisoned, strangled. It was a time of dark madness, and fear drove virtue into hiding. It was Albion's age of iron. I would not have even a hint of its return. One murder is not enough to call back tyranny. Master Wheldrake was comforting, though he also felt the chill as of an ominous wind. If Sir Tancred committed the crime, then he'll be tried, found guilty, and we'll all be sad for a month or two, no more. If, Wheldrake was confident. The true murderer shall be found, however, if it be not Tancred. Lord Hroon and Sir Christopher's successor working together will question any suspect person. There are so many who cannot be suspect, for so many attended the May Day ceremony. So you think a servant. A mad servant, aye, for it is a madman's work, sure enough. If calculated, the crime could have been hidden. Poison, stifling, imitation suicide. A madman, without a doubt. But Sir Tancred seems mad. Montfallcon shrugged. With grief. Just that. They stood now outside the Queen's apartments. It's my instinct, said Wheldrake, and I cannot give you rational explanation. He bowed, his feathers dripping, and made his adieu. Lord Montfallcon knocked upon Her Majesty's door. He was brooding, for he could only agree with Wheldrake, and he did not wish to do so. Sir Tancred was, at least, a convenient and uncomplicated culprit with no surviving family. His own suspicions lay towards certain foreign envoys domiciled at court. Ubacha Khan, for instance, was cold-blooded but determined and hated to be thwarted. Also, his vow of celibacy could make him all the more tense. And the blow had been struck once, skillfully, by someone used to handling a large blade. Or there was the warlike ambassador from Bengal, who, as Montfallcon knew, had once killed 2 girls of Lady Mary's age when he had caught them together in his palace bedchamber. Or secretive Li Pao, who had courted more than one mistress here, and who had revenged himself on Maeve ap Rhys by branding his family mark upon her buttocks. Or the Icelandic envoy, who had been Lady Mary's sister's lover until she had been married to Sir Amadis Cornfield. Or the envoy from Peru, a land notorious for its casual letting of blood, its human sacrifice. Montfallcon would investigate them all, and again he regretted Quoir's absence, as he regretted Sir Christopher's death. But more he regretted the darkness, the confusion in his brain, a familiar chaos he had fought daily in the reign of Herne. Wearily he knocked again upon the Queen's door. He hoped that Tancred was not innocent. It was better to have a culprit cut and dried than a court which simmered with speculation, rumour, gossip, suspicion and fear. He could sense them now, threatening his golden age, his reign of piety, his age of virtue. For a 3rd time he knocked, and at last the doors were opened by a white-faced maid of honour, still clad in the flimsy costume of a dryad. "My lord?" He pushed through. "The Queen. How is the Queen?" "She weeps, my lord. She loved Mary Perrott." I, nonplussed, Montfallcon stalked to the window and stared moodily at the lawns, the fountains, the fanciful shrubs. It was raining forcefully now. Great drops splashed from an uncertain sky through which the sun flashed an occasional ray. Montfallcon scowled and put his back to the window. The room, with its flower scents and its thick curtains, was in half-light, occupied only by the nervous dryad. "Announce me," he said. "My lord, I was instructed to leave her in complete peace for an hour." A curtsy. Montfallcon, his face like furious rock, marched grumbling from the room. "You'll say I was here, girl." "Of course, my lord." She closed the door on the terrifying Chancellor and began to shudder. From through the other door there came the sound of weeping, imploring cries, as Gloriana mourned her protégé, her sweet, happy lover, her child. For Gloriana recalled the jealousy she had felt of Lady Mary's happiness, and, in a brain confused by the day's chivalry and fantasy, had conceived the notion that she had by some charm brought death to the girl, had secretly willed it, had somehow, by frustrating Sir Tancred's enthusiasm for arms, arranged it. Perhaps denied satisfaction for his passions, yearning to use his monstrous blade, he had turned it upon the creature he loved. Moreover, this miserable logic was sustained by her training, for she knew she represented the whole realm, that she held responsibility for all that occurred in the realm, and that if this terrible crime had taken place, then it was because she had not been assiduous in anticipating it, and therefore preventing it. And if such horror could come about in her own palace, how much more horror must exist throughout her empire? How much unseen injustice, hidden cruelty? Is all this golden age a myth to hide a darker truth? Merely a cleverer disguise protecting an actuality as bad as my father's dreadful age of iron? Worse, for this also has hypocrisy. Montfallcon, since I was a child, convinced me that the dream, if followed and believed, must soon become the truth. Yet Tancred most of all believed that dream, and most of all had been destroyed by it. might even have used it to justify his deed. I allowed Montfallcon to make me his chief symbol. I accepted the necessity, and Albion prospered, became more joyous, attracted the envy of all other lands, brought scholars and their wisdom, merchants and their trade. Or is it mere gilding that soon must crack to reveal the rotten wood beneath? Are we all enchanted by this charming fancy of Montfallcon and his fellow dreamers? My father's eye sustained the myth of cynicism, denying piety and virtue. Does my own sustain a myth of happiness, denying crime? Is the succession of the seasons of man no more than a pretty tale to encourage us, to offer us empty hope, an attempt to give the lie to a grimmer truth than we'll allow? Do we impose this shape on chaos, as a child imposes shapes upon a pond's weedy surface, and is surprised when he returns to find that weed and water have joined together, mutable and never firm? Or do we frame a turbulent sky with our fingers and believe that, because we have narrowed our vision to that small sphere, we have captured and contained the elements? Or is it Gloriana who is at fault, unworthy to represent the age? "Oh, Mary, Mary, Mary!" Instantly the Countess of Skaith was upon her, bearing down on her with strong, boyish body, gripping her and kissing her. "Hush! Oh, Mary!" "Hush, my dear. I was her mother. Sir Thomas Perrott entrusted her to me. I swore she would be protected. I took her virtue, her virginity. I took her innocence. I allowed her this assignation. I encouraged it, I relished it, and I hated it as well, but I could not deny her that affectionate Sir Tancred, for she seemed so happy, and I had taken—" "You took nothing. You gave. You were generous, and she loved you for that generosity, like of all of us. She would do anything for you, not because you are the Queen, but because you are Gloriana." "Tancred shall hang." "No, hang." "He shall not." "He should. Or where's the proof he murdered Mary? None." "His sword?" Gloriana raised red eyes. "The only weapon of its kind, save those carried by Lord Roone and his men. Any wishing to kill her could have used the sword. And what did Tancred say? Lady Mary is murdered, little else. Has he admitted guilt? Well, he wept too bitterly. Tancred is innocent." Una was adamant. "Rather blame Montfallcon. Tancred has no habit of violence. His lust for it in your name is proof for that. His only experience has been at the tilt and mock battle. He could not kill anyone. We have both of us always known that. It is why you made him champion, you'll recall." Gloriana nodded. "True. The murderer is one of Roone's guard, with a passion for Lady Mary. You'll discover he was there. Servants will be questioned. A guard, certainly. But murder should not happen at my court, Una." "Murder has happened. The first in 13 years. And public. Why, I doubt it if there's a court in all the world could claim such an untroubled span." "By what effort? By what hypocrisies is this peace maintained?" "Oh, by goodwill, by faith. By a belief in justice, your Majesty." The Countess of Skaith was tired. "Honour's but an invention of man, and by man's honour is maintained. Do not doubt that Gloriana's court is virtuous." "I spend too long about my own affairs, my own conceits, my own satisfactions." "You spend too little, my dear." The Countess of Skaith stroked her friend's sobbing head. It seemed to Una in her heart that all this had come about as a result of her irresponsible adventure into the walls. And since that day, when they had both discovered the secret nomads of the depths, Una had had the entrance to her passage bricked in. But still she felt as if, by breaking through, she had released a dark spirit into the brilliance of the palace proper, a spirit which had inhabited one of them, possibly Sir Tancred, and destroyed Lady Mary. Now, even if the spirit had fled, it had left an inheritance. It would be many months before life at the court would recapture any of its old optimism. A tap at the door. The Countess of Skaith left her friend's side and went to speak to the maid of honour. Lord Montfallcon was here, my lady, and left a message. Now Dr. D awaits outside. Una left the Queen's room and closed the door. I will speak to him. The Dryad pulled back the door, and in strode D. Magnificent in mourning black, his white beard emphasizing the dark dignity of his robes. The Queen rests, said the Countess of Skaith. I have encouraging news, Dr. D told her. I am convinced of Sir Tancred's innocence. A witness? Una moved towards the Queen's door to call the news. No. Una paused. Not exactly, continued D. I believe that a visitor of Master Tolkadar's could have committed the crime. He came but recently, accompanying the Thane of Hermiston, who had been on one of his journeys to some astral plane. A ferocious creature this, a barbarian, with sword, axe and mace, daggers and iron and polished copper, fur and horn with some outlandish name I forget. Well, in short, he escaped the Thane, and we thought him borne back by demons into his own netherworld. Well, now I believe he is somewhere in the palace. But what proof have you, Dr. D? Well, I know Sir Tancred for a gentle, chivalrous creature whose love for Lady Mary matched his love of Albion. His sword, she reminded the sage, her blood on his armour. From where he held her against him. I have visited him. Lord Room has him in one of the older apartments with bars and locks and so forth. He is comfortable. His physical needs are provided for. But he screams. He raves. He is possessed. Possessed by your demon, she said. Mine? My demon visitors are tame, I assure you, and their work is beneficial. Well, I only say what others might, she told him. Ah, you are a sceptic, my lady, I know. Well, not a sceptic exactly, Dr. D. I differ so far as interpretation is concerned. But we discussed Sir Tancred. I believe him sane. That is to say, I believe that he was sane until the moment he found her murdered corpse. Now he cannot believe what has happened. His mind seeks to escape the truth. Alternately he weeps, and then his countenance grows sunny, and he seems to speak rationally, save that he refers to Lady Mary and how they are soon to be wed, and asks that she may visit him and so forth. It is a sad madness he has. Not the madness of guilt, but the madness of grief. So this escaped barbarian is the culprit. I can think of no other who could perform such a bestial, such a meaningless deed, for it is not ordinary wickedness that inspired her death. I think the same, but as for your barbarian, I have set the Thane to finding him. Lord Rune's men, too, join in the search, for Rune is with me in his feeling for Tancred's innocence. I do not think you will find him, said Una, scarcely conscious that she spoke. Eh? Yet I hope that you do, Dr. D. Has anyone else seen him, this one you suspect? Not in the palace. The Thane, of course, and Master Tolkadar. Such a barbarian would be noted. Aye, save that we were all in disguise today. We'll find witnesses, at least. If he exists. You doubt? Well, I doubt nothing save that he's the murderer. I believe that he returned as you first thought to his own sphere. My instinct leads me to suspect an enemy within the court. Better to blame an interloper, surely. Dr. D added a particular emphasis to his words. So as to calm the court? Aye. The Countess of Scaith put a hand upon her hip and nodded slowly. And we must save to Sir Tancred, added the alchemist. He is surely innocent. Save him by a lie? For expediency? 'Tis not a lie, but a speculation. Una's smile was bleak. A fine difference, Dr. D. It ensures that the innocent shall not suffer. 'Tis bad logic, and it leads to worse. Well, Dr. D shrugged. I'm no politician. You could be right. Besides, the barbarian might yet be found. Well, let us hope he is. You'll tell the Queen, you'll give her hope, if it pleases you, Dr. D. You think me a fool, eh? You have my respect, Dr. D. More than you shall ever realize, I think. What? Dr. D rubbed at his bearded chin. You're a mystery to me, my lady. It has surprised me you show such suspicion of my inquiries when you have a brain so quick and flexible. Well, possibly I merely argue with your methods of research, good sage. Then we must debate. I am always willing. And this is not the time. Of course, but you will reassure the Queen. I would not have her grieve more than she should. I know that the Lady Mary was close to her. I understand your motives, sir. Well, then my thanks to you, Countess of Scaith. Dr. D entered the passage, looking right and left as if uncertain of his direction. Then he set off back towards his own apartments through Hearn's throne room in the east wing. It was true, as the Countess of Scaith had guessed, that he had only believed the Thane's story of a mysterious barbarian, but he fully believed Sir Tancred innocent, and his mission had been to make certain that the Queen knew of this. Now he was reassured and could return to his experiments, wondering if the ancient art of necromancy might be employed to raise Lady Mary from the dead, if only for a moment, and learn her murderer's name from her own lips. However, he did not maintain so much faith in such practices. He believed that there were better, alchemical means of producing the effects claimed by the old sorcerers of Hearn's time, whom he, D, had helped discredit. Yet, he thought, if the dead could be raised, by whatever means, what knowledge might be gained? All the lost knowledge of the ancients, of those distant pre-classical ages, the previous gold and silver ages of the world's youth, the secrets of the stars, of transmutation, of navigation. Thus, by hopeful reverie, did Dr. D distract his thoughts from gloom, until he came into his chambers, wading through paper to hesitate at his bedroom. He had made up his mind to enter when he noticed with mild surprise that he had a visitor. The figure sat at Dr. D's desk, inspecting a half-constructed star-glass, trying to fit it into the lens which Dr. D had not yet finished grinding to his satisfaction. D frowned. Sir? Sir, said the visitor, a flat echo. A doppelganger. Do I know you? D inquired. Are you one of Murdoch's acquaintances? He felt a thrill as if at last he confronted a true demon face to face. I know you, sir, and I know your deepest desires. Indeed, D was amused. Indeed, another echo. The figure rose, remaining in shadow as it moved the length of the wall, coming closer to where D stood with a palm upon the handle of his bedchamber. Shall we enter, Dr. D? Why so? D had too often confronted both the peculiarities of nature and the various manifestations of the supernatural to feel any real perturbation, but his bedchamber contained the one secret he refused to share. Because, said the figure slowly, I would offer you a bargain. I know what you have in there. I know the problems you have experienced. I can solve them." Dee hesitated. He heard his heart begin to thump. "You know, you say, and I can give you what you have sought for so long. The price?" A shrug. Dr. Dee laughed as he turned the handle and flung open the door to let his guest precede him. "You've come to purchase my soul, have you?" His eyes flamed. "No, sir, I've come to sell you one, or at least grant you the means of obtaining one." The door closed on the pair. The papers stirred for a moment in the draught and then settled. A black rat, which had hidden itself on Dr. Dee's entering, re-emerged and ran across the room to a bench and began to climb. On the bench was a cage. In the cage sat another rat, a white female, staring with weary fascination at her wild visitor, her whiskers twitching, her heart pulsing. The black rat reached the bars, sniffing at her as she squatted in the corner of her cage. The black rat squeaked in order. Slowly, compulsively, the white rat began to move towards him until at last they were nose to nose. From within the bedroom there came a sudden shout, and the black rat looked up, ready to run. "It is not possible." "Oh, it is, sir, I assure you. In which case, my friend, I would give you anything at all." The black rat returned to its nuzzling.